Hi, y'all. So, last week there was a new normal in my house. Kids are home with me all day, every day, while my husband tries to work and I try to work. And my mom, who also lives with us, is trying not to go stir crazy because she can't leave the house. Due to the need to contain the spread of COVID-19, the novel coronavirus, I did not have in-person contact with a single person I don't live with for most of the week, and I didn't visit a grocery store. And your life might not be upended in the exact same way mine is, or this might sound like your life. I don't know. Everything is shifting so quickly under our feet that all of us are probably feeling pretty ungrounded right now. Last week, I offered some strategies on how to cope with that, on how to slow down, check in with yourself, get grounded as we are all scrambling right now. Today, I want to talk about where things have shifted now, practically speaking, and what it's showing us about our relationships, and one thing we all really might want to consider doing right now. Okay, so let's do this. Welcome to Making Polyamory Work. Hi, I'm Libby Sinback, and I know this is tough times right now, y'all. So especially right now, thank you for being with me today. I am a queer polyamorous mom and a relationship coach, and I'm here to help you if you're feeling stuck, if you're struggling, if you want your relationships to be more nourishing, more functional, more authentic, and full of love. On my show, I go deep into what actually makes polyamorous relationships work, because relationships are at the core of our well-being as humans. I think love is why we're here and how we heal. And I think right now, we're so much more present to that than we maybe ever have been. This is a stressful time, and if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that stress is one of the things that I tell you can really test our relationships, especially if you don't have the right tools to deal with it. I have been using everything I know during the past couple of weeks to work through big challenges with everyone that I love. And if you're struggling right now, I want you to know what I'm using. I want you to have these same tools. So I've decided to offer a free class over the next 2 weeks on relationship survival skills. This class is an hour long and we'll meet over Zoom. In the class, you'll learn the 5 essential skills that you can use right now to help you and the people you love weather this current storm together and make things better and come out stronger on the other side. To register, you can go to libbysinback.com/survival-skills. And I'll also have a link in the podcast description to sign up, or you can find all the details on my website or on my Facebook page. I really hope I'll see you there. With that said, now let's dive into today's episode. So, if you are a citizen of this planet Earth that we all share with one another, you know that a new to humans coronavirus is spreading across the globe. This is a crisis on a scale we have never seen before, at least those of us in this generation of people who are around today. And I think for those of us in the United States and perhaps other places, it's only really just now sinking in, or maybe just recently sinking in, how serious this situation is. One thing I'm seeing, though, is that some folks still really don't get it. So I just want to give everyone a really quick reality check here. So I live in Maryland, and they have not yet issued a shelter-in-place order, but my family is essentially following one right now. And in New York, New Jersey, California, Colorado, Delaware, Connecticut, Ohio, Michigan, Massachusetts, Indiana, parts of Texas, Pennsylvania, Missouri, Georgia, Idaho, Louisiana, and Maine have all just issued some sort of shelter-in-place requirement. In other countries, things are even more restricted. In Italy, you have to have a permission slip to go anywhere. If you are in Germany, you are not allowed to meet more than 2 people at a time unless you are living with those people. Governments all over are just not fucking around. I mean, in China, where this coronavirus had its first major outbreak, officials were literally welding shut the doors to apartment buildings so people wouldn't leave to spread the virus. And there is a reason why people are doing this. This virus also does not fuck around. It lives on surfaces for days, depending on the surface. It survives in microscopic water droplets in the air that you can just breathe in. You don't actually have to kiss somebody or even have someone sneeze on you to get the virus. It's effectively airborne. It can infect you and you'll be completely asymptomatic, but you can spread it to others who could then develop deadly symptoms. Oh, and while you may have heard that it disproportionately affects older folks and immunocompromised folks or folks with pre-existing health problems, which is true and is actually a lot of us in the polyamory community, a lot of us in the world, it also has killed perfectly healthy young people, children. So this is not a joke, and it sucks. And what I'm seeing is that this virus is creating a lot of tension right now with polyamorous people, particularly in polycules. Different people have different responses to this information. They have different information. And also, really, if you have something that you want to believe about this, you can go find evidence for your point of view because the information available on the internet right now is widely varying. If you want proof that this is some vast bullshit conspiracy, if you want proof that it's just like the flu and you don't need to worry about it, whatever, if you need justification for doing whatever it is you want to do, you can find it. But here's the thing. Depending on where you live, the recommendations sent down by government have also been changing multiple times. But the clear thing is that no, you don't go to bars. No, you don't go to restaurants. No, you don't go to gatherings over 50. But again, in other places now, it's like, no, not even more than 2 people. Not unless you live together and you need to be 6 feet apart. So I get why people are confused and concerned, but it's coalescing now to be a whole lot more clear that we need to be physically distant from each other in order to prevent the spread of this virus and prevent the overwhelm of our healthcare systems. And I also want to just lift up that, seriously, y'all, this is not about your own individual risk. This isn't about what you are willing to tolerate or whether you might get sick. That's not what you really need to be thinking about right now when you think about this virus. Public health officials, no offense, don't actually care about individuals. They care about big numbers. They care about systems and structures. And what we're seeing is that the systems and the structures cannot tolerate the numbers that are going to accumulate if everybody is thinking like individuals. And so here's where individual risk tolerance can really run afoul of public health, because one individual can literally infect dozens of people just by being near them, touching a surface with a hand they coughed in. So, and why am I saying this? Because I feel like polyamorous people, because we're so good about talking about STI risk, could potentially be really well equipped to talk about COVID-19 risk. But it's also really different. Because if I have sex with someone and they give me an STI, I'm not going to accidentally give that STI to my mom or my kids or the grocery clerk or the 5 people that I have a game night with. And also, there is no COVID-19 test that's easily available right now in the United States. We can't just go get tested to see if we have it without any kind of really good reason. We have to have presenting symptoms. We have to be in a at-risk group. And that's a real big problem, you know? But if I've got most STIs, I can just go get a test and I can tell everyone that I have it and they know who to stay away from and who not to. So, you know, for COVID-19, you could have it and not know and give it to people accidentally. In South Korea, where they did widespread testing because they saw that testing would be a really good idea, they found that a ton of young and healthy people were testing positive but feeling fine and would never have known that they had it. So how you really need to think about this virus is, if I'm an asymptomatic carrier, which you could be right now, is who could I potentially infect? There's literally a woman in South Korea that they've written a bunch of articles about who may have been responsible for infecting like up to 500 people because she was just going about her day, going to church, going to the grocery store, not really thinking about it, not getting tested. And the numbers of confirmed coronavirus cases skyrocketed between the time this woman was not quarantined and wandering around and the time that she was quarantined. So don't be her, you guys. When you think about what you're going to do, don't just think about yourself and your risk tolerance or even what other people in your immediate circles are comfortable risking, but think about all of the people that you could touch, where the chain ends. And when you think about linking up with partners or connecting households for mutual support, you have to make sure that you know who all is in that chain. Otherwise, that chain can expand beyond what you can imagine. And so if you do have an enclosed chain, though, let's say that you live with your partner and then you have another couple that you're close to, and so it's just 4 of you, and both of you are isolating. Everyone is able to work from home, or they're not working, they're not going to a workplace, or they're not interacting regularly with people. So you have a closed loop of 4 people. Are they all comfortable with the risk of being infected by you? Are you comfortable sharing your risk with everyone in that group? Are you comfortable with whatever choice that anyone makes to go to the grocery store, to go for a walk, to pick up some trash on the street, whatever they might do, to not wipe down the delivery box that they got from Amazon because the virus can live on cardboard for 24 hours? Like, are you comfortable with being with all of the choices of everyone in that group? And is that group really closed, or are there more people that could be impacted? This is a serious question because there's always a risk that an infection could turn really bad and land someone in the hospital on a ventilator. If you're young and healthy, your odds are lower, but it's still Russian roulette as far as I'm concerned. So I want you to take it seriously. Health officials are encouraging people to stick with the people they live with because you can't avoid the people you live with very easily anyhow. And that at least is a built-in container for the number of people who are sharing the infection. If it doesn't go outside of a household, then it's limited in how it can spread. But I get it, you guys, that it just sucks if you are not living with all of your significant others and that you rely on everyone that you have in your circle of love as an ecosystem of support, and now you're feeling cut off from that. Now, one thing I'm not going to do in this episode today is talk about all the virtual ways that you can mitigate that, but there are so many virtual ways you can mitigate that. Like, I've had video chats with a ton of people to stay connected to them. There are things like Marco Polo, which is like asynchronous video chatting, which can be really beautiful. There's, all different kinds of things like game nights and virtual game nights and Netflix watch parties and things like that. But I'm not going to go into all of that. Instead, I'm going to talk about what people are doing that are not that. And here are some situations that I'm seeing. I'm aware that some people are breaking the shelter-in-place rules that might be in place where they live and choosing instead to link up with folks in their polycules despite the risks and warnings. And what I'm also seeing is that some people who want to do that and see their partners are being asked by their nesting partners not to do that. They're saying, no, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable sharing that risk. That's not what I want to do. Someone on a message board called that a COVID veto. And what I'm seeing there is that is creating or amplifying existing hierarchies. It's making solo poly folks feel left out. It's potentially exacerbating some tensions around control and feeling controlled. And, I get it. It's hard. What I'm also seeing is that people who are living apart from their partners are really feeling that separation acutely. And the prospect of being without touch and the presence of their loved ones is really taking a toll on their mental health and well-being right now. And I want you to know that I see you. I'm also aware that there are a lot of people who have a nesting partner and yet that relationship isn't actually their primary romantic relationship. Or maybe it's one of two very serious anchor partnerships that they have, or three, who knows? Or maybe that relationship is flat out just non-sexual and actually maybe even a little tense and challenged. I think there are a lot of people for whom having other outside relationships and outside sources of support is one of the ways they keep their family intact. If they're parents and they don't want to get divorced, but they don't have a loving romantic relationship anymore, they're trying to sustain the family dynamic and have a sustainable living situation by having outside partners. And I think we have to be honest that there are a lot of people who are doing that. And now they don't have access to those other partners, and now they're just stuck with the person that they're living with. And that can be also really hard and not their preference. I'm also seeing some people who weren't necessarily ready or even seeking or planning to cohabitate, choosing to do that now, choosing to hunker down together in the same home so that they won't be separated, so that they can provide mutual care for each other and share resources. Maybe one of them is out of a job and, they're choosing to live together so that they can not lose their housing and not be able to pay rent and all of that. And people are doing this very quickly because you have to make decisions very quickly, and it's unclear how long that arrangement is going to be in place. And then there are long distance partners who are also facing a potentially long separation with no clear idea of when they're going to see each other again in person. And there are also some people who are being separated by circumstances. Some folks have jobs that they have to continue to go to because they're in an essential role, or maybe someone is ill, or someone's in a high-risk group. Or again, just those differing risk tolerances, like I'm okay seeing you, but you're not okay seeing me, so then we're not seeing each other. Different interpretations of what we should be doing can lead to painful separations between some partners and then not others, which again can set up some hierarchies. And I also want to highlight that Dedeker Winston of Multiamory pointed out that some people might feel inclined to reach out or reconnect with people who they've chosen to be disconnected from for their own well-being, who are not great people for them, who are toxic, who are harmful, with whom they've set boundaries because those relationships aren't nourishing. But now we're all a little more anxious and a little more scared, and that leads us to want to connect and not be alone. And so we reach out to people who are not good for us. And I want to just say, trauma bonding with someone who has hurt you is not a good idea right now. And so if you are feeling inclined to reach out to someone who's been harmful or abusive to you because COVID-19 has you scared, please, please take a breath and reach out to someone nourishing and healthy for you instead. And if you don't have someone like that, if you don't have friends to reach out to, or even family members, reach out to social media. Reach out on social media. Ask for help there. Find a Facebook group to join. There are a lot of they're private, but you can connect to them and join them. There are a lot of polyamory Facebook groups. There's a lot of groups have local communities online. Just really try to connect with others, or reach out to a therapist or a coach. Get the support that you need. Don't go to those places that are going to undermine you. Don't let this be the moment that you violate your boundaries you have in place to protect yourself because you're this part of you that's trying to survive is seeking connection. This is also hard, y'all. A lot of us are scared right now, and we don't know what the future will bring. Some of us don't know how we're going to make money in the next several months because our source of income isn't legal right now for us. Like if we work at a restaurant or a bar, or we do in-person events, or we're a hairdresser, or an acupuncturist, or so many different jobs that are in person that require in-person interaction, and they're saying they're not essential, you have to go home. Some of us are really worried for the people we love right now because we don't know when we'll see them or what might happen if they get sick at the wrong time or in the wrong place. We won't be able to be with them and help them. And also, everyone is probably tired. Especially if you're still working on a job site, if you're in some essential service job, if you're in healthcare, or if you're like me and you have your kids at home and you're also trying to keep the lights on in your work and keep going there too. It's freaking hard. We are all operating at limited capacity and facing all kinds of challenges that we're not accustomed to facing. I have to tell you, the big catalyst, I guess, that helped me see that I needed to offer this relationship survival skills class that I'm offering over the next week is because I have totally lost it with people I love more than once in the past couple of weeks, and over pretty minor issues that felt like big issues. Now, luckily, we managed to repair quickly and move through it, but it really was hard for a minute, and it reminded me that when we're under pressure, we're more likely to snap or go into some other, knee-jerk mechanism that's not going to serve our relationship, and that can undermine the very systems of support that we most need right now. And that's the other thing I want to talk about. So this virus, as I just sort of mapped out a little earlier, this virus is really showing us right now that we are all in this together and that our behavior impacts each other. And here's the thing, we always were in this together. A lot of polyamorous folks aren't used to thinking about things the way this virus is making us think about our behavior. But the truth is, whatever you do, whatever risks you take, whatever choices you make, they always impact other people in your life. They impact your closest networks the most, but depending on how isolated you are, they can impact people far beyond that. And a lot of thought leadership in polyamory has been about how, we're all autonomous and our choices belong to us and nobody has the right to control us. And that if you don't like something your partner does, it's your job to manage your feelings about it and not to control your partner. And my message, though, has been to polyamorous people for quite some time now that while I think autonomy is important and I agree that nobody has a right to control anyone, you also can't just do what you want and then tell other people in your life to just deal with it and not expect it to have an impact on them. All of our choices, big and small, have an impact on the other people in our lives to varying degrees. And if they have feelings about that, sometimes those feelings aren't just all in their head. Their feelings are about the impact that behavior is having on them. And that impact is not just theirs to manage and deal with on their own. We also have a job in our relationships that we rely on for support, for care, for resource sharing, for all that stuff. We have a job to be with the impact that we're having on each other. COVID-19 makes that reality that was always true very, very tangible. We are now not able to avoid the reality that our choices impact other people. If I go make out with my boyfriend right now, who I don't live with, one of us could be an asymptomatic carrier of COVID-19. If I give that to him, he can spread it to his entire household. If he gives it to me, I can spread it to my entire household, which includes my 69-year-old mom. That's just one example of many. And some of you have circumstances you can't influence, right? Like you might have an essential job and you have to show up. And so now you're taking on a lot of risk that's out of your control. And then you have to think about that risk that you're carrying and who you're carrying it to. You may have roommates and you don't have much influence over them and what they're doing. You may have health circumstances that just don't permit you to make whatever choice might work best for the other people in your life and even for, your emotional well-being. Now, those of you who are wanting to link to your poly partners, you may all make that choice to share the risk with each other. That might be a thing that you decide to do. And I'm actually not going to tell you not to link up with those people. But also, y'all, I'm just going to be your mom here for a second. It's really not a no-brainer. It's really something you got to think about. It's a big deal because all of the people in that little ecosystem there, they all have to be aware of how their choices are impacting each other. You have to really talk about it and you really have to think it through because the risk is real. Everyone who is sharing air with you on a regular basis is impacted by what you do. And again, the bigger point here is that's always been the case. It's something that we really don't want to be with because so much of polyamorous thought is built on this personal freedom and autonomy. But the reality is we're not islands. We are parts of an ecosystem. And whatever we put into the ecosystem is always going to be felt by everyone in that ecosystem. And that doesn't mean we don't have a right to do what we want to do and to self-actualize. And it doesn't mean anyone has a right to control us. I still stand by the idea that control isn't the answer. But what it does mean is we need to be accountable to each other. So no matter what your situation is right now, I want you to think about your relationships ecologically right now. I want you to ask yourself, beyond risk of infection, what am I putting into my ecosystem right now? Due to this crisis, you are probably pumped up full of a lot of adrenaline and cortisol that is just going to make you a lot more tender about everything right now, a lot more vulnerable, a lot more stretched. And I really, really encourage you more than anything to focus your attention on taming your whooshes, your stress responses, staying out of reactivity and checking in with yourself and everyone else. Now is not the moment to bring the immature parts of yourself out to run amok in your relationships. That's just going to put a lot of crap in your ecosystem that everyone else is going to have to deal with, and it's going to tax everyone. At this time, we need everyone who can be to be the adult in the room. We need so many adults in the room. Things are not ideal right now. Instead of leaning into anxiety, fear, resentment, depression, anger, insecurity, instead of picking fights or spiraling, instead of withdrawing and going cold or passive aggressive, I am challenging you now to lean into love, lean into your best self, lean into your courageousness and generosity. The reality is you're not going to like some of the things that have to happen right now. And I'm going to be real honest. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, possibly a lot worse. Nothing is ideal right now, but we can only do the best we can. And what I've been really focusing on is grabbing whatever joy I can, as long as it's not at the expense of any other people, and create as much joy as I can in my spaces. But making crucial decisions about things that might be life or death, literally life or death, out of reactivity and fear and desperation, that's not going to be great. Don't railroad people to accept risk that they're not okay with taking, even if they're being overly intolerant of risk. And be careful not to let things escalate, because that's also not going to be great. If you are parents and you're in home with your kids and you're fighting and it's escalating and it's getting terrible and your kids are being around, that can be traumatizing to your kids. You got to control that and get it under control. And again, control that reactive part of yourself. Bringing up old wounds or perpetual problems in destructive ways right now is just going to weaken all of you, when what you need right now is to be strong together. So to go back to that example of, the partner who might be, vetoing you seeing another significant other that you don't live with because they don't want that risk. They want to do their part to flatten the curve. They don't want to expose everybody in their ecosystem to that additional person. Yeah, that sucks. And this current situation might be giving that person license to get something that they wanted. Maybe they are insecure about your other partner. Maybe they don't like that person, whatever. And so now they're taking the opportunity to say, no, you can't go see them. And it probably sucks also to be the person telling someone you love that they shouldn't see someone they love. Who really wants to be in that position? It sucks to be there. And the reality is that the risk is real and the recommendations from the health department are clear. And this just isn't the time to get into a big fight, squabble about that. Instead, I want you, when you're faced with a difficult situation like that, I want you to look at the person that you're having the disagreement with and say, what can you do right now to become closer to this person through this disagreement? How can you really seek to understand each other better? This is a time to really listen to each other and make space and really consider each other and where you're coming from. If I could dispense one piece of advice right now, it would be to just slow way down and listen to each other and breathe and then listen some more. We really need to be willing to hear about the impact our actions are having or could be having on others. Even when we disagree with them, even when we think someone's being unreasonable, we have to listen and really listen to understand. If you're finding that in one or more of your relationships right now that there are a lot of people talking and nobody really listening, and everybody's just sharing their point of view and not really trying to understand each other, I encourage you to check out an episode that I did a ways back called Listen Up for some really valuable tips there. The short version is that you have to listen to understand the other person. You have to really get in and reflect back what you're hearing, and you have to take turns. Don't try to speak up to your part while someone else is talking to you about theirs, because then nobody's going to feel heard and nobody's going to hear anything. Also, I know some of you are probably nodding along with me about how everybody's behavior impacts everybody because you are unable to escape the acute awareness of how you impact other people. It's on your mind constantly to the point where you struggle to take up any space at all or ever ask for what you want or need. You probably feel like right now you're sort of made for these kinds of moments of crisis because you're the one who's willing to just button it all up and get through it. You're great at thinking of others and bending a lot to make everyone else okay. And this is a great moment for you to be the most self-sacrificing martyr you can be. And I want to offer that your job is to speak up when things are impacting you and ask for things when you need them. And I know that's freaking hard for you, but it's going to be really important. Otherwise, you run the risk of having a big, big suitcase full of resentment when the crisis is over. You won't feel it now because you're too busy packing it all in. But later on, when you open it up, it's going to be awful for you and everyone else. You've heard me talk about resentment before. It is a quiet, destructive force in so many relationships. It is the termite infestation that eats at the foundation of love. So please do your best to stay out of it and speak up when you need to from a place of love and care for your relationships. You need to let other people know if they're impacting you. You need to stand up for yourself if you're getting railroaded. Don't let that happen. It's not the same as unnecessarily polluting your ecosystem. Instead, you're saying, this is going to pollute my ecosystem. I can't let it in. I can't let this happen. Okay? If you're curious about what my situation is, by the way, it's kind of wild right now. I love my kids, but I was definitely not prepared to homeschool them. They're gorgeous, funny, but also energetic, rambunctious young boys who on a bad day can fight about literally everything. Talk about my ecosystem being full of that. It's definitely full of that. And I mean, do I want to be home with them 24/7? No, not really. I really miss things like play dates and other activities. I really miss school. But those things just aren't available to me or my kids. And I'm making the best of it. Up until this past Sunday, I also hadn't seen either of my non-nested partners in person since they have closed the schools, because I just sort of took that as I sort of followed shelter in place, even though that wasn't the rule. But then, on Sunday, I did go for a run with one of my partners outdoors and invited my best friend over to bring her own food and sit 6 feet away from us in our backyard and have a picnic. And I've been, doing video chats with my other non-nested partner and with friends. My other non-nested partner is isolating right now because they had a service job, although that service job is now shut down. And the odds are high that once they've been, isolated from us for a period of time, that they are likely to move in with us once it feels safe. And I was definitely not ready for that. I was not ready to take that step of cohabitating, but we decided it was the best thing for all of us right now that we do that. That's also hard on my other relationship, though, with my other partner who I don't live with, because we're looking at all the changes and everything shifting so quickly, and the possibility that increasing restrictions on our movements or shifts in, the status of someone in our household could mean that we won't be able to see each other in person for who knows how long. And it's a tough decision to figure out what to do there. The problems are real, and we're all talking about it, and we're all bringing our A game on how we talk about it with each other. And we're also being pretty forgiving when our A game just isn't available to us, as like mine wasn't a couple times last week. I'm not saying everything's perfect, because it's not. We're all caring for our ecosystem, though, as best we can, and trying to be careful about what we're bringing into it and what we're taking out of it. So to recap, COVID-19 is revealing to all of us on a global and relational scale that we are not on our own, that we are instead in this together. Your behavior impacts others, and it's in your interest to think about your relationships ecologically rather than autonomously. So my challenge for you in the next week is to be a steward for your relational ecosystem, the same way we all need to be stewards for our health ecosystem right now. Be careful about what you're putting in and what resources you're taking out. Call on your highest and best self. Call on the best version of you and breathe down the parts of you that you know would be destructive to that ecosystem. Listen to understand, speak from love, tackle problems collaboratively. Don't point fingers, get rid of the blame game. And if you're someone who's inclined to bend for everyone else, be mindful of that and don't break yourself. Part of maintaining the relational ecosystem is maintaining yourself and making sure you're not silently taking damage that will fester into a big suitcase of resentment that will do damage later. I love you all, and I'm thinking of you. And I hope I'll see you in my class later this week. Otherwise, I will talk to you next week. Take care. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you have any thoughts about what I've said or a question for the show, I'd really love to hear from you. You can reach me on my website, libbysinback.com, or you can email me at libby@libbysinback.com. I'm also putting out a lot of content on Facebook right now, so if you want to hear even more about what I think and what I have to say, you can connect to my personal page and also my professional page. Both you can find if you just do a search for Libby Sinback. I'll also say that if you are needing some support beyond this podcast right now, I really encourage you to join me this week in my relationship survival skills class. I'm offering it 3 times. So I'm offering it on Wednesday night, that's tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. I'm offering it on Sunday at, I think, 10 a.m. And then I'm offering it again on Tuesday, I think, in the middle of the day. You can sign up for that class at libbysinback.com/survival-skills. If you're struggling even more and you feel like a class just isn't going to cut it and you need some deeper support, this is work that I really love to help my coaching clients with. If you're interested, you can sign up for an introductory session with me. You go to talktolibby.com to sign up, and we'll talk for an hour, and we'll see if coaching is a good fit for you. All of these links are also in the podcast description. Also, if what I am saying has been helping you, please share it with your friends, your networks, your Facebook groups, etc., and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. It would also mean a lot to me if you leave a review or a comment on iTunes or whatever podcast service you use, because that will help more people find the show. Thanks again for joining me today, and I will see you soon.